And also a special thank you to our cafeteria staff, Susan Houndshell, Misty Hensley. Thank you so much for everything you do. Susan said last year they ran out of green beans. This year we have enough to feed the whole entire student body all next week. So if anybody wants some green beans to take home, feel free. It is awesome to me every time we have this that our past Hall of Fame members come back to recognize the new inductees. So if all of our past Hall of Fame members would please stand up, I would appreciate it. Tracy and Liz are like, is he going to make us stand up any more times? We appreciate it. Thank you all very much. Again, Mr. Stewart back here, our principal, allows us to do this. Trust me, I take a lot of school resources to help us do this, and I appreciate Mr. Stewart that he allows us to do it because they lose out on some school time to help me out, and I appreciate that immensely. If you know of any Hall of Fame members or people that are candidates for the Hall of Fame, please let us know. Our committee does an unbelievable job of research. They start early, they continue. We have requirements on how many years out and things like that. But if you know of anyone else that you feel like we are missing, we always really want to think about those people from the 50s, 60s, 70s, those people too. And we now finally, after Title IX came in, our girls program, which we got 3 of them sitting back there, I think they were there when. Did Naismith invent the basketball, Liz, when you guys started playing yet? But they started in the late 70s, and I can tease Liz because her and I graduated the same year. From when they were here to where it's at now, and they will tell you it is immensely different. My wife played in the 70s and wore the same jersey for 3 straight sports, and now it's a little bit different than that. So I still feel like we have a ways to go, but we have come so far. And you just look at last year's banquet when Josie went in and Olivia and Hannah went in, very deserving people. So anybody you can think of that we need to look at, please make sure to let us know. At this time, we will start with the presentation of our new inductees. What we will have is their presenter come up and speak first, and then we will bring up the new inductee to come up and talk after that. Our first one is Mr. Doug Smitty. And his presenters are his daughter, Hannah Ernst, and son, Luke Smitty.
So I just want to start by thanking Doug Foote, the committee, and the district. I can't think of another award that would be more befitting of my father than this award now. I get to get the unique experience of having him both as a coach and a father. I got to see him on his late nights when he was building a schedule or setting a lineup. Because of this, I got to see his passion and his drive for coaching. Now, this passion did develop a long time ago, when he was in high school, actually. He didn't start wrestling until his freshman year, and then he didn't start cross country until the following fall as a way to be in shape for wrestling. These 2 sports were new to him because up until then, teamwork was a team sport. Wrestling and cross country were things where you compete as an individual, but you're still part of a team. And this new experience is something that he carried with him through college, where he managed to talk his way on to the wrestling team his freshman year. Just don't ask him how well he did. After his first year wrestling in college, he ended up taking a break from sports and didn't make it another priority until he started here at Richmond. Much like his high school, his first year he was a coach for the wrestling team, and then the following fall he started cross country. In his 30 plus years of coaching, he did take some breaks to focus on things like his family. But he would always come back. Whenever the district came to him and said, we have a position need filled, he would be that person to fill it. I saw this time and time again throughout my life, whether it was scouts or sports or anything, I knew that my father would step up and make sure that I had a good example of what a leader was. And I also, unfortunately, I only got to see him as my coach for 2 years. Although, if anyone's been to any of my events, I've had him as my coach every year. He was very loud, and it was very obvious when he was there because he would cheer on not only me, but anyone else representing New Richmond. Because that was just who he was and is. Now, Doug Foote is going to talk about his awards and accolades, but I know that some of his greatest accomplishments are the lasting impressions that he's made on his students and his athletes.
I'm Hannah. I was fortunate enough to be coached in cross country by my dad. But I'm not much of a public speaker, but for my dad, I could stand here and speak endlessly about some of my favorite examples that exemplify his character. Everything I'm going to say about my dad cannot be said without recognizing the shared time, assistance, and loving support of my mom, Amy, who he met here in this very district. She encouraged him to pursue his passions in athletics and coaching. My father dedicated his entire adult life to others through his endless loyalty and care for two things: his family and the students and members of the New Richmond community. Something I firmly believe in is leaving a positive impact wherever you go, and I learned that from watching my dad and his daily interactions and his innate ability to turn the small moments into the big ones. Moments such as the numerous days spent at wrestling meets where my mom and us kids would bring along a sack of burgers and fries because my dad informed us his wrestlers had not eaten. Or my dad surrounded by a hungry team standing at the concession stand purchasing each of them food. He made sure every athlete was fed. The countless times we'd be on our way home after the school day or practices and we'd see a student or athlete walking. My dad would simply say, "Make some room," and he'd pull the car over to take them home safely. He wanted to be sure if these students and athletes may have had a rough life at home, they were taken care of when their time was spent with him. I rarely saw him without a clipboard and whistle, even at home as he was arranging lineups, meets, or double-checking his stats and the stats of other teams they were competing against. He approached his teams and seasons by breaking them down to a science with attention to detail, solving problems, and always putting his athletes' best interests first. Of course, having fun along the way. He definitely was our coach at home, too. In order to earn a can of pop as kids when we were in elementary school, he would take us to the local high school track and make us run a mile. He taught us to work for what we want, just like he always has. The moment for me that best defines my dad is after I delivered my second baby. I had some health complications and was physically unable to do much at home, including caring for my toddler and newborn. My dad voluntarily spent the night multiple times a week for months, doing nighttime feedings, diaper changes, early wake-ups, and fully embracing grandpa life, but most of all dad life. Being there for his children with no questions asked and no hesitation. It moved my husband and I to our core, but came to us as no surprise because that's just who he is and always has been, at home and at New Richmond. Selfless, loving, quirky, dedicated at bringing brightness into the world around him. Even though I have his words, "Dig, dig, dig, no one passes you," living rent-free in my head to this day, I also have "Say hello to someone you don't know today" when he would drop us off each morning in high school. The impact he has left on New Richmond is one for the history books, and he exemplifies all the traits and then some of someone deserving of this honor. I want to sincerely thank Mr. Foote and the Hall of Fame Committee for inducting my dad, Coach Doug Smitty, into the Hall of Fame. Congratulations.
Coach Smitty's plaque will read, Doug Smitty coached several decades of athletes at New Richmond spanning 1988 to 2023. His highly successful coaching tenure included 14 years of high school cross country, 10 years of middle school cross country, 5 years of high school wrestling, 16 years of middle school wrestling, and 6 years high school track and field. Respected and revered by his athletes, Doug's middle school cross country and wrestling teams won several league titles, and 30 wrestlers qualified for the state meet. At New Richmond High School, Doug trained 4 individual state qualifiers in cross country and led his teams to several league and district championships. Boys Cross Country League champions 1989, 1992, and 1997. Girls Cross Country League champs 2022. Wrestling League champs 1989. Girls Track and Field League champs 2018 and 2019. Boys Cross Country District runner-up 1989 and 1993. Girls Track and Field District runner-up 2017, 2019, and 2021. Girls Track and Field District champs 2018. A steadfast mentor and educator keen on nurturing the next generation of athletes, Doug started the first running and wrestling clubs for elementary age children in New Richmond. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Mr. Doug Smitty for induction into the New Richmond Sports Hall of Fame.
I have to be honest with you, the speech that I prepared was about as thick as a telephone book. And I knew Doug Foote and some others would not be too pleased about that. So over the last few days, I squeezed it under 20 minutes. I'd like to begin tonight with a quote from the late, great John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy said, "Ask not what your team can do for you or your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country." And when I started coaching and teaching back in 1988, that quote from John F. Kennedy kind of stuck with me. And I changed the words just a little bit from country to team. I focused on the team concept. Yes, individualism is important, it's nice, but the goal is to do well as a team. And 35 years ago, especially when I coached middle school wrestlers, you know, it's all about me, 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 me. And getting the team and the individuals to focus on what's best for the team, it took a lot to be able to do that. And I'm told today with coaches that athletes are even more into me, 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 me. If you look at college football, now the athletes are transferring from year to year just to get the biggest deal, money-wise. I'd like to begin tonight by thanking the Hall of Fame committee. I appreciate your time, your effort, your expertise, and congratulations for those of you that at one point were inducted in the Richmond Hall of Fame. I'd also like to thank the ADs I've had over the years. When I began in 1988, I taught at the elementary school for 10 years, athletic director at the high school is over here. I've only had 4 ADs in 35 years. So I've been lucky. And I can tell you, the last 2 ADs we had here at New Richmond High School were phenomenal. Mrs. Pat Hill, which is now our lead commissioner, she was here, she supported me, she supported the athletes. She still supports the athletes as our conference president. And then since 2008, I've had the pleasure of being able to work with, not for, but work with Mr. Doug Foote. And I know the student body thinks highly of Doug Foote. I know his coaches respect Doug Foote. Other athletic directors, when we see them out at different meets, high respect for Doug Foote. In fact, I think he's already in the Hall of Fame for Southwest Ohio and the state of Ohio as being the leader among leaders. So I like to thank all 4 of those ADs that I've had. I also want to take some time to thank my family. We'll start with my mom and dad. They're both in attendance tonight. You can raise your hand. You don't have to stand. Name's Dave and Dottie Smitty. It's funny. I didn't realize when I started playing sports that you could sit out a season. I was always told, hey, it's fall. You got to do a sport. What sport you doing? Until I was like a sophomore in high school. And I realized there's kids that don't play 3 sports. I could take a season off. And a lot of that push came from my mom. She's like, you're not taking a season off. So thanks, Mom, for pushing me in that regard. I also have, sitting with my family, I have my older sister, Stacy Piccolo, and her husband, Mike Piccolo. I have my brother, although he does look older than me, Jeff Smitty, raise your hand. He's my younger brother, and his wife, Hope. And I'll talk about them in a few minutes. But if you take his high school wrestling wins and Mike's high school wrestling wins together, you get about 200 wins in high school. They were pretty darn good wrestlers in their own right. I'd also like to introduce my immediate family. We have Hannah. You met Hannah. Her husband is Austin. Austin has a slight connection to New Richmond. He was the star quarterback at McNick High School when they came to New Richmond to play us some football. And he's kind of disappointed because he only got to play the first half because they had such a big lead against New Richmond. But he's back. And he married a New Richmond girl, which is kind of funny.
Go line.
I also have, you met my son Luke, one of the most intelligent, sarcastic guys I've ever been around. I did coach him, slightly, but never had him in the classroom, and that was probably a good thing with all his sarcasm. But he was a great athlete in his own right. In fact, if anybody would have asked me his senior year, he should have earned the Archie Griffin Award because he did everything, and he excelled at everything. But I appreciate him coming here tonight. My other daughter, Emily and Trey, could not be here tonight. They both graduated from Richmond High School. In fact, Trey, here's a little tidbit about Trey. Trey's senior year, I think it was 2011, when they opened up the new baseball field across the street with the turf, he was a starting shortstop on that team. So, a lot of family connections here at New Richmond. And most importantly, I'd like to thank the matriarch of the bunch. And I'll talk a little bit more about her later, but she was there. And back in the 90s when I coached wrestling, we had 2-day tournaments. We would leave Friday after school, wouldn't get home till midnight. We had to be back here at the high school by 6 in the morning, wouldn't get back until like midnight Saturday night. We had 3 kids. So she had to play the role of both father and mother. And she did a great job. She kept our family together. She was the glue that kept the Smitty family together. I'd also like to thank the thousands of athletes, and I know there's been more than 1,000 that I've had the pleasure of coaching. Have been blessed to coach, 7th graders on up to 12th graders. And a lot of those athletes excelled, not just in sports, but also in life. And I'd also like to thank the volunteer coaches. I say volunteer because when I coached middle school wrestling for about 16 years, I would recruit 40 to 45 athletes. We're talking 7th and 8th graders. We go to a Saturday tournament, it's just me. We had no paid assistants. Luckily, I found some quality people that would step in and help me be role models for these middle schoolers. So I'd like to go ahead and give their names out. Ron Scribner, New Richmond graduate, 2-time state qualifier in wrestling, a Marine. He kept those guys nice and focused. Ray Walriven, he helped me for a few years. He's in the Hall of Fame. Highest place we ever had in wrestling, finished 4th at state his junior year. Jeremy Dees, nicest guy you ever want to meet. Jeremy's also in the Richmond Hall of Fame. Jason LaRoe, outstanding athlete in his own right. He ended up going to Summit for soccer, but he was an outstanding wrestler. He came back and helped me coach. And then I finished my career with middle school wrestling with J.R. Forsey, 3-time state qualifier, 2-time state placer, the gentle giant himself. He helped me for the last 2 years. So without these volunteer assistants, we wouldn't have done as well as we have done. I would also like to thank Todd Wells, who was the middle school wrestling coach, and Greg Hawkins, who's a Hall of Famer. They were the middle school wrestling coaches when I was the coach in the 90s up at the high school. And they would have those boys ready to go when they got to me in 9th grade. So Greg Hawkins, thank you. You did a fantastic job. And for cross country, when I coached high school cross country, legend himself, John Calebs, was the middle school cross country coach. He did a fantastic job. But we know John Calebs probably coached everything in his last 50 years. But he did a great job getting those runners ready for me. On for the sports that I coached. Wrestling. I was fortunate to coach for 21 years, 5 high school, and 16 years as a middle school. We were able to have 6 state qualifiers in 5 years at the high school level. That's the first thing I asked when I was the coach back in 1988. I said, when's the last time we had a state qualifier? It had been about 10 years. I said, well, that's going to change. In the next 5 years, we had 6 state qualifiers. Ray Walram finishing 4th. We also have several Hall of Famers. I saw Toby Shamblin. He's in the Hall of Fame. He was a wrestler. Steve Plank. Of course, Ray Walram. Every time I'd walk down that hallway to go to practice, I'd look at that wall at those athletes. I'm impressed with what they did. There is one story I want to tell about my wrestling, and it's a team story. After our first year as the coach here at Richmond High School, and we had all the success that we had, we won a first league title in like 15 years. I knew coming in the second year we had a team that was stacked. So I made sure they had competition. Because I told the athletes themselves, if you finish the regular season with an unblemished record, I should be fired because I didn't do my job. My job is to make sure that you have competition to push you, to make you know you have to work harder to be the best. So I scheduled a dual meet, high school dual meet with Mighty Moeller, the men of Moeller. In the 90s and in the 2000s, Moeller was the best in Cincinnati. They were top 3 in state in Division I, that's big school. I scheduled a dual meet. We walked into the little dome they had at Moeller back in the 80s, late 80s, and there's their team warming up, and they look like a machine, and you can hear them talking. We walked in, and they're like, where's New Richmond from? Are they from Indiana? Are they from Kentucky? What division? They had no clue who we were. And I told our boys when we got the bus, they don't know who you were. You need to compete at your highest and let them know who you are. And boy, did we show them. We went back and forth. They'd win, we'd win. They had a defending state champion. They had 2 or 3 state qualifiers on that team. It came down to the next to last bout before they could wrap up the meet. I think they beat us by 9 or 10 points. After that meet, we shook hands, man to man. They looked at our kids, they were like, wow, you guys are good. And I told our boys, that's probably the proudest I've ever been as a wrestling coach. You earned the respect of the top program here in Cincinnati. On to track. Now, I only coached high school track towards the tail end of my career. And I got to tell you, I wish I would have started earlier. Track was probably the most fun I ever had coaching. The story behind the track team. First 2 years, I think that 2017, 18, we always host the track meet, so it's here at home. My girls team, I was the head girls coach, Toby Lewin. He was the head boys coach, still is. We hosted that, and we finished in 2nd place. The girls team was 2nd districts, which is good. Indian Hill beat us. 2nd year, I'm thinking, I think we can beat Indian Hill. And we never lost to any other Division 2 or 3 schools for girls track that first year or that 2nd year. We go to the Coaches Classic, which was held at McNick High School. And Indian Hill was there. And the Coaches Classic, they take like the 10 best Division 2 schools in the city, the 10 best Division 3 schools, and we have one big meet. And we were right there hanging with Indian Hill, going into the last event, which was a throwing event. I don't know if you know how to score in track, but in track, your top 8 finishers earn you points. Indian Hill had lots of firsts, but New Richmond had lots of 2nds and 5ths, 3rd and 6th. So our points started adding up. We didn't have the stars that they had, but we had the depth. And going into that last event, it was the throws. Indian Hill had 1 girl left, we had 2. Both of our girls finished in the top 8. I think Coach Lewin, your daughter was one of them. And we beat Indian Hill. Now, what's Indian Hill? I told our girls the next Monday at practice, I looked at them, I said, you just beat this year's district champ, regional champ, and I'm predicting you beat the state champions. And they're like, what? I said, you did? And they almost beat them twice because at Finneytown we were right there with Indian Hill. But our stud Myler, she had a college class to go to, and we lost by 5 points. At the end of the season, Indian Hill girls, district champs, regional champs, state champs. So I don't know, in my 35 years, I don't think any Richmond team, sports teams, ever beat a state champion the year they won state. Well, the girls track team did. They had a heck of a season. And it's sad to say, probably the best amount of talent I ever had for the girls' track, the year, was the year we had COVID. There was no track. Jenna Burns was a senior. You had these incoming freshmen that were phenoms. No track. So that was kind of disappointing. But I can tell you, especially to the ladies that are already in the Hall of Fame, there's going to be some female track athletes coming up soon in the Hall of Fame. You got Jenna Burns. She owns the 2-mile record, did own the mile record. She's part of the 4x8 record. She placed top 4 or 5 in state. She'll be up for nomination in about 5 years. You have Samantha Ringhand, second at state last year in the pole vault. The girl's a sprinter as well. She just graduated. And then you got a current girl with Coach Lewin, who is Riley Davis. She's already been to state a couple times. And she's only a junior. So there's going to be some girls mentioned for Hall of Fame in the near future. And I noticed last year, of the 3 ladies that made it in the Hall of Fame, 2 of them, Olivia Beheimer and Hannah Hall, ran for me in 7th grade on the cross-country team. I don't think cross-country was their sport, but they were pretty good athletes, even back in the day. Okay, on to cross-country. I was blessed to coach cross-country for 24 years. In fact, when I was just hired, I think it was my 2nd year of teaching, I was the high school cross-country coach. 10 years at the middle school level. So far, we have 2 Hall of Famers. Jamie McCart, he was a 2-time, almost a 3-time state qualifier in cross-country, missed it by like a half a second. And then Jay Penry made it in the Hall of Fame a few years ago. We were able to, I was able to take 4 of those athletes to state, which is like every athlete's dream, get to the state meet. But the story I want to tell with cross-country. When I began cross-country in 1989, Toby Lewin, raise your hand, he's here as one of my guests and my friends, and his daughter Hannah. Toby was a senior on that team. So he was, about 17, 18 years old. I was like 22 years old. And we had a pretty talented crew. And first meet, we went to St. Bernard. It was a little small meet, and the team won, but I'm thinking there's only like 7 schools here. Second meet was on a Saturday, and it was in Covington Catholic, over there in Kentucky, across the bridge. And I couldn't make the meet. I was the head coach. I couldn't make it because for some reason my brother Jeff and Hope decided to get married, and I was in the wedding. So I'm like, what am I going to do? I'm the only coach. There's no assistant. So I started looking around the hallways for teachers, possible teachers. It's my 2nd year as a teacher, and it was my current wife's 1st year as a teacher. And I thought, oh, she's a rookie. Maybe she'll give up a Saturday to watch these high schoolers and chaperone these high schoolers. So I asked her, introduced myself, asked her. She was so nice even back then. She said, sure, I'll go. I said, you don't know anything about running. I said, the kids, the seniors, they'll take care of everything. All you got to do is make sure the bus and the kids get there, and you get back. And she goes, well, how good do you think they'll do? I said, oh, there's probably 30 schools there. It's a huge meet. I said, maybe top 10, top 8 would be really good. Well, I went to the wedding, was in the wedding. They're still married today. And didn't know how my team did. We didn't have cell phones back in the day. And Sunday came and went, and then Monday, I show up, and I said, how'd the team do? She goes, oh, I think they did pretty good. I had no idea. I walked down to the track. There's all the boys standing shoulder to shoulder. Like, what are you guys standing like that for? And they were upset. They're like, Coach, you thought we would only finish 10th or 8th? And they stepped aside, and I kid you not, there was a trophy about this tall. I'm like, oh my gosh. They ended up in 2nd place, 32 schools, and the only team to beat them was Rowan County, the defending state champions. And I'm like, wow. So to this day, my wife, Amy, she has bragging rights. She has earned the tallest trophy between the both of us. One meet. Doing too bad on time. For closing, I would like once again to thank the Hall of Fame members, the current Hall of Famers. I told my wife next year I could start coming and sitting with you guys. And she's like, oh boy. But I'd also like at this time to congratulate Tyler Anderson, phenomenal athlete, Chris Kilgore, who I happened to have in my advanced science class in middle school. Quick story with Chris Kilgore. He was in my class right before lunch. He and his buddies, they knew I was a coach and all this. They said, "Won't you challenge Chris to an arm wrestling contest?" I'm like, "An 8th grader?" And they're like, "Oh, you scared?" I'm thinking, I'm going to let these kids talk me into that. Well, they finally talked me into it right before lunch. So I made sure all the other students left. Chris Kilgore and I, we went at it. His buddy's like, "You got him, you got him." 10 minutes later, I think he finally folded because he was hungry and wanted to go eat. And to this day, kids ask me, because I'm currently a sub, I do not arm wrestle kids anymore because of him. He was that strong as an 8th grader. And I'd like to leave tonight for anybody that sat in my science classrooms, and there's many, many people I see here that was in my science classroom. I like to say, Q Herc. They know what I'm talking about. Q Herc. Thank you very much.
Was there anybody here who thought Doug's committee could hold it to 10 minutes?
What was the point?
20 came and went 15 minutes ago. That was good. JC, still didn't have your record, brother. You still got it. An hour and a half is still yours. Next up, Mr. Tyler Anderson and his presenter, Coach Josh Stratton.
Evening. I haven't done this in a while. I've gotten up in front of people and talked, but incredibly honored that Tyler asked me to do this. And the first thing I'll share with you guys, a lot of people don't know, is me and Tyler have the same birthday. So we're both crazy Geminis, and every year I try to text him on our birthday, wish him a happy birthday. But yeah, after 5 years, Tyler's been out 5 years, and I texted him. And I said, "Hey, it's been 5 years. Time to put Tyler in the Hall of Fame." And he's like, "I changed it. You gotta wait 10 years." I was like, "Dang on it." So then this year, I saw last year that Josie got in, and I was like, "Okay, wait a minute. She was a year older than Tyler. All right, so next year's his year." And then I text Rick May around a couple months ago, and I was like, "Okay, I think Tyler's ready, right? We need to put him in the Hall of Fame." And he's like, "Yeah, I think you're right." So I text Doug, and he's like, "Yep. He's been out 10 years, so that was a no-brainer." If you read anything in the program about Tyler's football career, he was amazing. I was blessed to be lucky enough to be here at the time when he came through and played football at Richmond. But getting to know Tyler, not just as a player, but as a person, it was a lot of fun and means a lot to me. I think about him all the time, and that's the reason why you coach, is because of those relationships that you get to build with guys that hopefully carry on into their adult life. I'm sure Brian's coached forever, and he gets to present. He's probably bringing all kinds of people into this Hall of Fame because of his long career and the relationships that he built with players. But Tyler's my first that I was fortunate enough to coach that is now in a Hall of Fame, and he's not just a great player, but he's just he's a throwback, right? He's old school. He's not. There's not a lot of kids his age, men his age that are like him. He could have easily grown up in the back in the 50s. Just an absolute warrior, and that's the word that I think when I think about Tyler. The word that comes to mind is warrior. His jersey was always a mess at the end of the game. He's covered, if we played, on grass, he's covered in mud, grass stains everywhere. And he always had that look in his eye like he was going to run through your soul. And then when the game was over, that big, contagious smile that all the Anderson guys had. You would see it. He'd take his helmet off, and then he'd start smiling from ear to ear. But during the game, he was all business all the time. But Tyler also was a great teammate. He was always celebrate his teammates whenever they did, whenever they had success. It was never about him, even though his senior year, we leaned on him a lot. We didn't have a whole lot of offense that year other than him. And as you can see, he rushed for 2,000 yards his senior year, which is incredible. In a one-back offense where, everybody knew who was getting the ball on the defense, and it was him, and it didn't matter, honestly. And a lot of people have maybe seen this on YouTube, but the comeback, okay, is on YouTube. We were playing Goshen, right? Yeah, we're down, and Tyler didn't. I had gotten mad at the seniors this game and pulled a bunch of them off the field, and we're about to lose to Goshen, and and I was because I'm an idiot, honestly, but like Tyler, like I questioned something that he did, and he gave me an answer, and I didn't like his tone of his voice, so I like pulled him out of the game. He's the best player on the field, and he's yes sir, and he stood right behind me on the sidelines the whole game, waiting on me to get over my temper tantrum and put him back in the game. And eventually I did. There was 3 minutes and 20 seconds left. We were down 21-7, right, James? And we won that game 29-28 or something like that. He scored 3 or 4 touchdowns in 3 minutes. And we put him in at quarterback and just direct snapped it to him. And it was incredible. I'd never seen anything like it. And I think about that every year during football season. I think about that game. But I think about Tyler, just the kind of man that he is now. He's a dad, and I'm sure he's an amazing dad. I'm sure he's amazing to his lovely wife, and he's going to continue to raise his kids the right way. His boys will be just as tough and humble and sacrificial as he is. He's been that way, I think, probably his whole life. I know he definitely has been the whole time that I've known him. And I'm super excited that I don't have to bug Doug anymore about when the right year is to get Tyler in the Hall of Fame. So I can't talk that as long as you, sorry. But again, I'm just incredibly humbled and honored that he asked me to do this, and I've been so excited ever since Mr. Foote texted me and told me that Tyler was getting into the Hall of Fame. So congratulations, buddy. Deserve it.
What Coach Stratton didn't say about that game, I was posting out there looking for a head football coach. With about 3 minutes to go, and Tyler Anderson's been sitting over there for about 2 quarters. I really don't care what the young man did. Get his butt back in the game. We are not losing to Goshen. Tyler, you saved Stratton's job. Tyler Anderson. Graduating in 2015, Tyler Anderson left an indelible mark of excellence on the athletic program at New Richmond High School. Tyler excelled in football and track and field. As a pole vaulter, Tyler earned first team SBAC honors as a junior and won the district pole vault championship, clearing 12 feet 8 inches. He placed 8th in the regional tournament. On the football field, Tyler earned varsity letters for all 4 years of his high school career and led the Lions as team captain. His senior year, Tyler was named first team All-Star SBAC and SBAC Player of the Year. At the time of his graduation, Tyler established the following individual football school records, ensuring his place in New Richmond High School history. Career records: first in carries, 503. First in rushing yards, 3,511. First in touchdowns, 59. Single game records: first, second, fourth, and fifth in rushing yards in a game, 345, 343, 286, and 280, that's just phenomenal. First total yards in a game, 379. First and second total points in a game, 36 and 30. First rushing attempts, 48. Single season records: first points in a season, 184. First touchdowns, 30. First in rushing attempts, 321. First in rushing yards, 2,003. First in total yards, 2,141. Tyler attended Thomas More University from 2015 to 2017, where he played 2 years of college football. He earned his bachelor's degree from the University of Cincinnati in 2020. Tyler is a sergeant first class in the Kentucky National Guard and has served since 2016. And I have to admit, this young man is one of my all-time favorites. It is absolutely my privilege and my pleasure to introduce Tyler Anderson to you for induction into the New Richmond Sports Hall of Fame.
Wow. Good times. If I'm being completely honest, I kind of just left high school in its entirety behind after graduation. So as I'm hearing all these cool things, my head is just elevated. So right now I'm about up here, right? And it's funny because I know that the instant that I get home, my wife is going to do what she does best. She's going to come up, say good job, maybe get a peck on the cheek, and then she's going to snatch me off my high horse right back down to reality. Rightfully so. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. What a trip down memory lane it has been coming back up that hill. It is an absolute honor to be invited back here today. And I gotta say, it seems like not a whole lot has changed. I hit the same potholes on the way up from Caroline Street. These dairy bars look like they were still in business. Love to see it. The cafeteria feels as cozy as ever, and I can only assume that the food is just as nutritious. I'm not gonna lie, I figured that we'd at least have a new water tower design by now, but being as monumental as it is, why fix what's not broken, right? Again, this is a pretty awesome experience. It is just so crazy to me that 10 years has already come to pass since I last played here. And if anyone knew me as a player, they remember that I was one of those guys who loved to dish out hits just as much as I did taking them. Back then, after a brutal game, I still remember being pretty fresh that next Saturday morning for film. Now fast forward over the hill with a slight drop in testosterone later, I can tell y'all that my body isn't so kind nowadays, as I can feel the wear and tear starting to catch up. So a few months back, it was like any other night. I was wrestling my 3-year-old in the TV remote, and only then did I receive a phone call from an unknown number. I usually don't answer them, but this one I did. I pick up, hello, and I hear, Tyler Anderson. I instantly had to look out my window to make sure that the house wasn't being staked out or anything. But come to find out, it was good old Mr. Doug Foote calling to congratulate me on this year's Hall of Fame lineup. Amazing. Now I couldn't figure out if I was more blown away by the fact that I finally get to join New Richmond's greats on that wall, a wall that I passed countless times, or by the fact that Mr. Foote has somehow managed to dodge retirement after all these years. It makes me sad to think about that I have to work another 35 years, and this man just has the ticket sitting in his back pocket. But of course, this all being from the same community, I'm sure we can all understand why. So on to it, I was always an active kid and really just loved anything athletically demanding. I started football up here in middle school with the legendary Ron Bird, the renowned Rick Mahan, and the ruthless Christopher P. Sheldon as my coaches. Middle school, as we all know, we're all small and tiny, most of us anyway, underdeveloped, and still trying to figure out what we're good at. Moving into my freshman year, I had the old school Coach Scholes and Chuck Warden, who, as you know, who were like drill sergeants on the field. Now, 9th grade was a defining period for me, as I recall early on those hot summer two-a-days, being on the freshman guinea pig practice squad against the varsity team. I took a handoff on the famous power play to the outside, you know which one I'm talking about, and got absolutely wrecked by Nick Hill, who was about yay big and a senior at the time. He came up out of nowhere, clocked me, and I recall just laying on the ground for a few moments, looking like a bobblehead. Everybody went crazy. There was a brief silence, followed by the immediate, "Oh!" And I'm talking Coach Tim Dunn, Megan, our athletic trainer, even Coach Mahan, launching his clipboard in the air. "Oh!" Now that was a feeling that I told myself that I would never feel again. So needless to say, I started taking the weights a little bit more serious. And ultimately, started making other people feel that way. Later on mid-season, I had earned a spot on varsity kickoff and kickoff return, which, unlike my baby brother Josh's tenure here, back then, a freshman playing varsity almost seemed like a rarity. I became the varsity running back my sophomore year, and the rest was history. Now, we never made it to the playoffs, which didn't really matter, because I was still able to walk away from that field with memories that I will cherish for a lifetime. The camaraderie was second to none, and the game gave me an identity during some of the lowest points of my life. It gave me a sense of purpose. And as an underprivileged kid from the village, it was a pretty damn good opportunity to embrace while tippy-toeing around negative influences. Now, I'm not going to stand before you fine people with the narrative suggesting that football saved my life, like a varsity blue blindside story. But I will say that football here in New Richmond had a deep and meaningful impact on my pivotal projection on principles as a man that I stand on today. An ethical foundation that has irrefutably carried me into adulthood and in all past and current endeavors. Believe me, I can go on the number of people to thank that played a part, big or small, in my success here in New Richmond. So in short, thank you to the Sports Hall of Fame Committee for the generous selection. Thank you to these fine gentlemen up here with me today, and you all for sharing this incredible moment. To Coach Stratton, amongst other mentors, for the immense amount of support. To my siblings, for making me a team captain long before I ever even picked up a football. And lastly, to my lovely wife and two beautiful baby boys, who without question will eventually make me old and gray like Doug here. But nevertheless, continue to push me to greater heights, far greater achieved beyond those Friday night lights. I am truly humbled for this recognition. God bless and go Lions. Thank you.
And he is even more impressive now as a young man than what he was as a kid, and that's hard to imagine. But the Anderson family is a very special family, and thank you all for being here. Next up, Mr. Chris Kilgore and his presenter, Coach Brian Benzinger.
Tremendous speech, both of them. Everybody that's talked tonight, I feel I'm a little nervous about. I wasn't nervous until Tyler got done. I asked somebody that knows a lot more about this kind of thing than me, and I said, hey, any tips, tricks of the trade? And they told me, be brief, be heartfelt, and be seated. So that's what I'm going to try to do. I am going to try. I'm not sure. Sometimes I do get long-winded, and it's always nice to be talking about someone that's as special as Chris Kilgore. I have some index cards I'm going to refer to. So just real quick, I've had the opportunity to go to other Hall of Fames in the last couple of years at other schools. There's nothing like this. It's nothing like this whatsoever. This is intimate. It's personal. They take time, sometimes too much time, and it's really, really special. And I think we are pretty lucky to have something like this. As I walked down the hallway, which I often do, like Coach Smitty mentioned. I do that a lot, just to kind of reminisce sometimes. But I went back, when Chris got in, I kind of went back and kind of just looked at it from a different light. Maybe looking at some old players of mine, and then lots of siblings. But then I looked at it from a different way too, when I realized Greg, his dad, is in the Hall of Fame. So I just kind of wanted to kind of show you how special our Hall of Fame is. We got Joe and Katie Midler. Let's not forget Aunt Judy, Robert and Jack Tucker, Ralph and Dan Shepard. There were so many I had to write it down. Ron and Ben Burr. I might have missed some too. Ray Walribbon Jr., Ray Walribbon III, John Duncan and John Duncan Jr., John Duncan and David Duncan, Joe Hawkins and Greg Hawkins, Joe Hawkins and Chris Hawkins, Tom Warden and Patsy Warden. I need another card. Patsy Warden and Carrie Diesel. So there's 3 generations. So I just think that's kind of special and says a lot about our community. And so before I start talking about Chris, if you think that was kind of pandering to the crowd, you're kind of right, because a lot of these people are here tonight that I mentioned on the list. Because that's my best joke. I got 0 laughs, so I'll stop the jokes. Chris, I'm going to start with his dad. His dad, Greg, was a knot-hole coach, one of the best knot-hole coach we've ever seen down there. We've had some really, really good ones. Without mentioning names, but there's been some really, really good ones when I was a little kid. In fact, I asked my brother, give me some names of some of those coaches. But I don't think any of them were quite as passionate as Greg. And so when his son Chris started playing baseball here, it's as a younger coach at that time, I think it was my 3rd year, it was a little intimidating, but nothing about Greg. He was always so nice and always so supportive of him. But it was just like, I wonder if he's approving of what's going on here, because I knew this guy knows baseball. Sometimes you have knot-hole coaches, they're dads, and yeah, Greg was a dad, but he knew his stuff. And I just kind of appreciated Greg and the way he was, because there were some things probably that he wasn't totally happy with. No parent probably ever is. So, but he was always so nice, so supportive, and so kind. So there you go. He's also in the Hall of Fame, which is why I mentioned all those names in advance. So we add another one to the list. Some of these I'm going to skip. So when when Chris was a freshman, all right, and there's been some things said up here about freshmen playing varsity. It's been done before. It's unusual. It's unusual for that to happen. And sometimes it's not an easy thing to do. It was an easy decision to make, but sometimes it's not an easy decision to be accepted by others. We had a team that was 1 run away from league championship the previous year when he was in the 8th grade arm wrestling Mr. Schmidt. Got to laugh on that one. We were good. When we had a lot of guys coming back, I think we had 8 or 9 seniors coming back. We had a JV team coached by Mr. Heflin that had a very good season the year before. We checked all boxes. We checked every box that we could, and we were probably going to be league champions. But Chris made us better. You see him now, very handsome young man. He looked just as strong as a freshman as he does right now. He was really put together. Had to find a place for him. It was going to ruffle some feathers. It was breaking the status quo, disrupting that all to pieces. There was going to be some feelings, hurts, but he made us better. It was the right decision. It was the right thing to do. He made us better. At the end of the day, he led us in. He was in the top 3 in just about every category. He hit in the top of the lineup, which I knew he was going to do. He was strong, fast, had a good arm. He was coming up as a catcher, and that's one of the things that I was a little bit, what am I going to do with him? I got a senior catcher named Rodney Sloan. He was really good, so he's probably not going to catch. So he was versatile enough to play other positions, but he led us in several categories, and he was top 3 in just about every offensive category. He was league champion that year. We had a 34-game winning streak. Now, baseball's a little different. You can be really good, I mean, in baseball, depending on who's on the mound. But his freshman season, we didn't lose a game in the regular season. In fact, that streak would continue for 14 games into the following season, and it only ended, Coach Duncan, with a bad call at Amelia, a one-run loss in extra innings on a double play ball that would have scored a run. You remember that? You remember everything. A couple stories about Chris before I wrap this up. His first home run as a freshman, he hit one that he says hit a house in left center field. Now, I don't remember that way, but that doesn't mean anything because there's a lot of things I don't remember. But 10 years from now, that ball's going to go over that house, and it's going to hit a car, and all that stuff. That's just how it is. Some of you old guys know what I'm talking about, right? He was the perfect guy for the pressure that a freshman might face. He's quiet. He still is kind of quiet, I think. He was confident. Although some seniors on the team might have thought initially he was a little bit too confident, he quickly won them over. By the end of the year, he was one of the guys. When he hit that home run, a junior on the team named Michael Holcomb, and we'll talk about him a little bit when I talk about Jim, he was screaming, freshman, freshman, freshman. It was a walk-off homer as well. Freshmen get picked on. Underclassmen typically they get picked on a little bit, not in a harassing or bullying kind of way, but duties. Coach Hawkins knows what I'm talking about. Coach Robinson knows what I'm talking about. Back then, we had team stuff. We didn't have players today have 3 bats, 2 gloves, their own catcher's gear. There's not as much equipment, but we had a bat bag, we had a ball bag, we had a helmet bag, we had to carry the water. And Chris, being the freshman on the team, said nothing about it. He was always good about doing the duty that he did, which was the worst one of all, the water jug, which is a little bit heavier than most, but he was a strong guy. He knew all eyes were on him, and so I just kind of think I was not good enough to play freshman baseball as a freshman. I can't imagine, I just kind of started to think about it, what kind of pressure he had on him. It was really, really impressive the way he pulled through that. Our league record, Chris is part of a team. Our league record in his 4 years was 46-3. 2 seasons we were undefeated in the league. Our overall record with Chris on the team was 87-14. 2 district titles. He'll be the first to tell you that he had some help there, right? We had some good players, guys like David Duncan, Tyler Henderson, Mike Holcomb, John McMonagle, Eric McMonagle. These are all of Chris's teammates that are on that wall already. One more story, and then I'm going to let Chris take over. His senior year, we're playing Turpin, and we're playing over at Lakota West, and we're in extra innings, and David Duncan was pitching, and he had run out of innings. We're in extra. Chris came up in the bottom of the inning. So in other words, David was done pitching. We might be in trouble. So it's the bottom of that inning. The next inning, we got to put somebody else in against a really good Turpin team. And Chris hit a walk-off home run, so we didn't have to cross that bridge. So that's probably one of the highlights that he'll remember forever. You can only hope to coach players like Chris. You can only hope that you get one. So it's my honor to introduce Chris Kilgore, Hall of Fame.
Chris Kilgore, a 2004 graduate of New Richmond High School. Chris Kilgore participated in football, basketball, and baseball. He was a 4-year varsity letterman and senior team captain in basketball, a 3-year varsity letterman and team captain for the Lions football squad. Chris earned second team SBAC honors his sophomore year and first team SBAC honors both his junior and senior years. As a senior, he was named Cincinnati Enquirer All-Star Honorable Mention. A standout baseball player for the Mighty Lions, Chris was voted first team SBAC and was named Cincinnati Enquirer Honorable Mention both his freshman and junior years. As a senior, Chris was voted first team SBAC and first team Cincinnati Enquirer All-Star. And at the time of his graduation, Chris held the school record for all-time hits at 147, runs scored at 139, doubles at 32, stolen bases at 42, total bases at 226. After his graduation from New Richmond, Chris attended Mount St. Joseph University, earning a master's degree in education and a second license in special education. And it is my pleasure to present to you Chris Kilgore for induction into the New Richmond Sports Hall of Fame.
All right. Good evening, everyone. First, thank you, Coach Benzinger, for the kind words and giving up your time to come and introduce me tonight. I really appreciate it. Next, I want to express my deep appreciation for the incredible honor to be inducted in the Richmond High School Athletic Hall of Fame. It's a great honor to join many other great athletes that have been inducted before me, especially my Uncle Greg Higgins, my Uncle Gary Higgins, my Uncle Chuck Kilgore, and of course my dad, Greg Kilgore. It was very special joining you all in the Hall of Fame tonight. It's also an honor to be included in the Hall of Fame class with Tyler Anderson, class of 2015, by all accounts, an absolute stud football player. And then two undisputed New Richmond legends, Doug Smitty and Jim Robinson. The thing I most remember about Mr. Smitty's class was his passion for sports. He would always give recaps of the sports he was coaching, and he would talk to anybody else in the room that would share what they were doing in their sports. He also ran a March Madness bracket pool in his class every year, which was also fun to have some competition throughout the school. The thing I most remembering about Mr. Robinson was his bigger-than-life personality. Whether you were in his photography or yearbook class, or walking by him in the hallway, or you were at his summer home at Coney Island, he would always greet you with a big smile and a "Hey, how are you doing?" Athletics for me is more than just competition or achieving personal success. It's about growth, teamwork, striving towards something bigger than yourself. Through sports, I developed a work ethic that has served me in all areas of life, and I've met people who have become lifelong friends. Some of the life lessons I've learned through sports are humility, battling through adversity, and how to be a good leader. The upside of playing at a school like New Richmond, which was a smaller high school, is that most people who played multiple sports, as many people have discussed before me. So you would go from one season to the next and develop chemistry with most of your teammates, because the next season you were probably playing a different sport with them. And that's just something kind of cool and unique to playing at a small school. Once high school ended, and most of us continued to get together through college from these close friendships that we developed through our high school days, and that continued through on into adulthood. We've been at each other's weddings, met each other's kids. But even though we may not get together as often as we used to, generally sports are involved when we get together. Whether it be a college football Saturday, playing in a golf league together, playing in a beer league softball team together, or competing in a March Madness pool. A lot of our get-togethers involve sports. Moving on to kind of the sports side of this conversation is New Richmond football has been blessed with a lot of great talent over the years. I came along during one of the program's really great runs. I played a small part in a 26-game regular season winning streak, which unfortunately I also played a small part in a streak coming to an end at the hands of Clinton Massey in my junior year. It was a mud bowl, which Tyler doesn't know about playing the mud that used to happen out here every year, where from 20 to 20 it would just be absolute dirt. So when it rained, it made for some difficult situations. And that happened to be our only loss of the season that year. During my freshman year of football, Coach Bird gave me the opportunity to do kickoffs and field goal for a fantastic team. That 2000 team was one of the best teams in school history, in my humble opinion. To see the passion and intensities that those players played with was awe-inspiring. There are quite a few of those guys who are you walk down that hallway, you'll see quite a few of them out with their plaques already up. During this playoff run, I got to endure the humbling side of sports. I was called on to attempt my first field goal, which was also a game-winning field goal, which I happened to come up a little short on. So needless to say, after coming up, I felt awful. I kind of felt like I let the team down, let the school down. And then as I walked in the locker room, I was called into where all the seniors were sitting as their Richmond football careers had just come to an end. And Matt Armbruster was the team's quarterback and leader, brought me in and kind of let me know that it wasn't all on me and to keep my head up. It was an incredibly compassionate gesture that he didn't have to do. That is something that's always stuck with me moving forward to my senior year. It may have not been in a playoff game, but I ended my football playing career at Richmond High School with a game-sealing field goal. In a way, it kind of brought my career full circle. I was lucky enough to be put in a position for quite a few game-winning plays in between. And in my junior year, I completed a 45-yard Hail Mary to my number one wide receiver, Brian Erdman, to cap off a 98-yard scoring drive to win the game. The very next week, I was able to run in the game-winning touchdown in overtime behind some very good blocking against Hillsborough. And then the next week, I was able to run in for another game-winning touchdown against Little Miami. In the Inquirer article that they published, they were pushing for the team to change our name from the Lions to the Cardiac Cats, which we stayed true that season, played a lot of close games. I played with many very talented people on the gridiron during my time at Richmond, and a lot of the leadership characters that I've learned not only from my coaches but the players that I played with. And now going to the baseball side of things, I had a little bit of varsity experience both in football and basketball as a freshman. I was brought up to do kickoffs and field goals for varsity football halfway through the season, and then in basketball I was brought up on the tournament roster in varsity basketball and played a little bit. However, when I made the varsity baseball roster from the beginning of the season, and I was placed in the leadoff spot in the lineup, it felt a little different. I felt more pressure and a little out of place. Going through our preseason scrimmage helped some, but I still didn't have a whole lot of confidence in myself that I belonged yet. Our first game, which Coach Benzinger kind of talked about, was an away game. And as a freshman, I was put in charge of getting the big water jug all the way from the bus to the dugout, while also carrying my own equipment. Needless to say, it was quite a distance, and I was struggling with it a little bit. Mike Holcomb, who he mentioned, who was one of my summer baseball teammates, and was a top player on the team, both hitting and pitching, came to help me out. He didn't realize it at the time, but that simple gesture helped me feel like someone had my back on the team. It showed great leadership, as some of the other varsity returning players weren't sold on the fact that maybe I shouldn't be on the team. I could feel the tension with some of my teammates as the season started. So that simple act made me feel more a part of the team and not an outsider. That team went on a special winning streak in their own right, and we finished the regular season 21-0. I would also like to say thank you to Coach Benzinger, him showing the confidence and sticking with his decision of making me a starter as a freshman and not wavering with his confidence in my ability helped me to gain confidence in myself, that I was put in the right spot and I belonged. I was glad I was able to prove him right in the end, and it didn't take too long for my teammates to come around and accept me. I made first team all conference, and I was second on team in batting average and led the team in doubles for my freshman season. Over the next 3 seasons, we found postseason success. My sophomore year, the team lost in the district finals to McNicholas. My junior season, we made it to the regional semis. We lost in a 1-run game to the eventual state champions, Purcell Marion. My senior season, we avenged that loss from a year earlier and beat Purcell Marion. Again, we advanced to the regional semis and lost to Bell Fountain. Those tournament runs were so special. I think a big reason was because many of my teammates on our baseball team had grown up watching each other play, because everyone started by just playing knot-hole baseball in Richmond. It's not like it is today where everyone goes to travel baseball as young as you can. So summers were spent watching the Richmond team a year ahead of you and a team a year behind you, so everyone knew each other. So it helped when you got to high school with team chemistry. There were great examples of leadership, like the aforementioned Mike Holcomb. He had a great knack at keeping things light, but being able to show up when the team needed him. Other great leaders I learned from were Brett Wiseman, who had a great lefty swing, Tyler Henderson, who threw flames on the mound and was a good hitter at the plate, Brian Erdman, who was a great shortstop. He was 6'5", which was kind of unusual for shortstops, but his athletic ability and length helped him to get to balls in places that some people wouldn't be able to get to. Samir Yusuf, who was one of the best defensive first basemen I've seen. He could pick anything at first and would put his body in the way of the ones he couldn't. Dave Duncan was the best pitcher I've ever played with. He locked the pitching staff down for all 4 years. He played in Richmond. Kyle Royce, whom I already mentioned from football, was a great backstop and signal caller behind the plate. And one of the great leaders from our football team, Matt Dean, provided a great power bat. There's also some coaches I would like to give special mention to for their dedication to Richmond athletics. Coach Helton, who was my 7th grade basketball coach. He's a great coach and all-around great guy. Unfortunately for him, he gets to witness my terrible golf game in the summers in our golf league. Coach Caleb's, he was my 8th grade basketball coach. His love for sports is unmatched. Also, he's an extraordinarily good human being. His initials are JC, and he shares his birthday with our Lord and Savior. Any coincidence? Coach Forsey was my 7th grade coach for football. He gave me my first experience carrying the ball as a starting fullback. He was a wonderful cook, as well as running the culinary program and sports gallery restaurant at Grant Career Center. Coach Hawkins, he was my freshman head coach in football, but also coached on the varsity staff. He was responsible for calling many of our touchdowns. And then the legendary coach, Coach Bird. From the stories I heard from my uncles and dad, he had gotten a little softer on the edges by the time I played for him, but his sense of humor and dedication to the sports of Richmond High School was unparalleled. I'll throw out a nice dadgummit for him. Coach Reardon, he took over for Coach Bird as the head coach of the Lions. He did a great job preparing us physically, as he was also our strength and conditioning, in charge of our strength and conditioning program as well. Coach McConnell, our fiery varsity defensive coordinator, he had some hilarious anecdotes to motivate and bring the best out of our players. He always showed the utmost confidence in me. Coach Brooking, who was my varsity basketball coach for my sophomore and junior years, and he was a great math teacher in his own right. He brought intensity and passion to the program. The hours and dedication put into the coaching sports is not lost upon me. I know now that I coach football and track at Mason, I see just how much time and energy these coaches put into make successful programs. You often have to make sacrifices in your personal life, but the love and passion for the game makes it worth it. These coaches have inspired me to make the student athletes I coach not only become the best of their ability in the sport, but to make them the best human beings they can be. Using sports to teach invaluable life lessons is something these men have passed on to me, and I am forever grateful. I hope to have the impact of the athletes I coach that they have given to me. Thank you to my in-laws and the rest of the Dinkelacker family who came to support me tonight. I'm sure your GPS was very confused when you put in to come to Richmond High School today from the west side. Siri probably asked if you were sure of your destination. All jokes aside, thank you for always being there for my family. I would like to send out a big thank you to my family who are here today to support me and celebrate my playing career, just like they were for so many games over the years. I think it was a rite of passage coming from the Kilborn Higgins families that sports were ingrained in every part of your being, from lollipop soccer all the way up to my high school playing days. I'd like to say a special thank you to my mom for the thousands of hours of practice, games, and training sessions over the years. I would also like to take a moment to say a special thank you to my first coach ever, my dad. Your passion for sports was unwavering. You coached a large portion of the athletes I played with through my high school career. The countless hours of driving to games, practices, and out-of-town tournaments, training sessions, I always knew that you'd be right there watching and letting me know how proud you were of me. So
As I think about this special night, I'd like to think you're smiling down with pride tonight. I would have never become the person I am today without you or Mom. I would like to close with, we are NRR, and thank you for coming.
Next we have Mr. Jim Robinson, and his presenter is Coach Brian Benzager.
So I had 2 stacks of cards, and as I was kind of just looking through this second stack here, I noticed that one card was in the wrong stack. It involves the list outside, and it involves last year's inductees, right? So we can't forget about Tom Beheimer and Olivia Beheimer, and we can't forget about Liz Buckingham and Josie Buckingham, another generational example. So I had to remember stuff from 20 years back with Chris, and now you're asking me to remember stuff from 40-something years back, so this should be interesting. I've heard the term old school up here tonight from a couple of different guys. Jim's really was never from the old school. He was from the school that they tore down to build the old school. Okay, that was good. Better. Jim said I'm getting better. So Jim came here my sophomore year. I was a sophomore. That was his first year, fall of '82, and Jim was my first real experience with Jim was as the JV basketball coach. He came in and started contributing to the athletic program right away. I remember a couple of things about sophomore JV basketball. I remember Jim was a really good coach. I just remember that. I remember this guy knows his basketball. And he's in here, I think, maybe more for baseball, probably, right? But he was a very good basketball coach. He was fun to play for. We were good. We were very good. We won almost all of our games. I don't know if we won the league championship, but it doesn't matter for 40 years later, right? We just say we did. That's like that home run. That home run going over the street. So I just remember it was a very fun time, and I also remember that was a time when basketball for me was, I really liked football, and I really loved baseball, but basketball for me was, I don't know if I want to, do I want to do this? He was the one that kept me going and with basketball. And as a junior and as a senior, we had very good years. In fact, Elgin Lamb, sitting over there, Hall of Famer, will be. Hall of Fame team. We were sectional champions in '84, Elgin's senior year. Jim was a big part of that. He coached alongside Bill. It's funny what you remember, stuff that really doesn't matter, but tell me if I'm wrong. I remember Bill and Jim leaving practice one day to go to night class. You remember that?
Working on our masters.
Working on your masters. Is that Xavier? It's amazing what you tend to remember. So him and Bill we had something pretty special with those two guys. We used to do an all-nighter here with the basketball team, and we had reign to just about everything that we wanted to. They trusted us. I don't think we were allowed to go in the pool. We didn't. I don't think. Some of the guys might. But we had a lot of fun. It was all-nighter. We played games, obviously basketball, but we played other games too. You remember that kind of stuff. That's what makes seasons special, and Jim was really good at making seasons really special. Jim was an industrial arts teacher at first, and then later became graphic arts. I never had him in class. Wasn't my cup of tea, I guess. But he had me, you may not remember, another story, up on the 3rd floor. I want to say, Miss Corbin, doesn't really matter, a couple rooms up there, there was a room that had a sliding wall. I was talking to Rick Mahan about this. He remembers that room. He remembers those 2 rooms. And I think there was a platform where the desk for the teacher sat. They had study halls there. And I had Jim for study hall. And it was late after my junior year. And he called me up. I know you don't remember this. When you're young, you remember stuff like this. He called me up and he said, "Hey, do you know that the baseball job just got open, just became vacant?" And I think I was a little shocked because Coach Simpson, Hall of Fame, Coach Simpson, he had some really good years, really good players, and I was as his player for 3 years. I'm like, God, it's really, you know. But I remember that moment. I remember going back and sitting at my seat and maybe thinking about it for a couple of days, and I'm like, this is going to be good. This is going to be a good move. So I remember that story. It was a kind of a game changer on the base as far as the baseball programs go. So that's a story that has no consequence whatsoever, but you remember that stuff. So he got the job, and he inherited a team. One of those guys is here, Jack Kilgore, who was also a tremendous athlete. You didn't want to get in his way on the football field either. Kirk Willis, Donnie Morrison, Jim Hill, Jack Kilgore, Jeff Foster, John Workman, Scott Bueller. And then we had a tremendously talented junior in Jeff Aston and Kevin Woodruff. We had some talent. This team had some talent, but we really hadn't done much. We underachieved the year before, and Jim had a tough job because we were kind of a tough crowd. Jack, you remember this. I think we needed a little bit of guidance and discipline. We weren't disrespectful, I don't think. I don't think it was like being punky and disrespectful. It just trouble seemed to find some of our guys, and I don't know that we were. We just needed discipline. But he had another job, and that was to win us over. We just lost our old coach, who like I said, was very, very good, very, very good coach, and he had to kind of win us over a little bit, but at the same time be a little bit more. That's when you think about it, that's kind of two hard things to do. Everybody wants to be friendly, but he needed to kind of whip us into shape a little bit, and so he was able to do that really quickly, very quickly. He made us a team, and that's what we needed. We needed to be a team. He kind of put us. Gave us a little bit of confidence, believing in ourselves, but at the same time, you need to be you're a part of a team. You're not individuals out here. So just real quick about the '85 team, which I think is one of the most underestimated, and it's like the Korean War, underestimated, underappreciated. We had 20 plus wins, which was almost unheard of back in the '80s. League champs, sectional champs, district champs, which I believe was the first district championship team in baseball. Made it to the regional semifinals, lost a heartbreaker by 1 run to the eventual state runners-up, and I think they lost a heartbreaker in the state. We were a good enough team. Coach Smitty was talking about being state champions. We were legitimately a good enough team to say we really could have been state champions. And baseball is baseball, and that's the way it goes sometimes. I remember a story, and this is where it gets a little foggy. We were in some kind of tournament. You remember this at Willowville?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And there was some big teams in that tournament. There was Milford, Loveland, Glen Estee, Amelia, us, and there might have been one more. And I think we hit our hot streak. We were pounding everybody. We beat Glen Estee, we beat Amelia. Both of those teams were very good. Made it to the championship game, and we're going to face Loveland. And very good team also, and they I don't remember why, but they forfeited, right?
Yeah, we moved it to Sunday because it got dark.
Well, they just were scared of us. That's what I remember. There was a Bethel game one time when you have to understand the coach at Bethel at that time. You know him, Mr. Clip, the shoe thing. That's almost too good of a story not to tell, but I'm trying to keep it short here. We're playing Bethel. Bethel has a very good team that year. Jim's coaching third base, and a guy named Scott Bueller comes rounding third. And I didn't see it. I don't know what happened, but somehow, some way, there was contact, and that's a big no-no. The base coach can't touch the base runner. And then there was another thing that happened after that I don't remember that Coach Robinson told me about. But the coach went absolutely ballistic. I mean, it was like almost scary for a high school kid. I thought he might die. That's how crazy mad this guy was. He got tossed out of the game, and Coach Robinson also reminded me that his wife was the one that took over that game. We won the game, but my point to that story is this is one of the most easiest guys to get to know. One of the most easiest guys to like. And I really think Coach Dennis, who didn't like anybody from Bethel, I think he really enjoyed and liked Mr. Robinson as well, Coach Robinson. We played a district final game against Wyoming. That game was at Princeton High School, and I think Wyoming was probably the favorite team. And not only did we beat them, Donnie Morrison, who's down that hallway there, pitched a no-hitter, and we shut him out, and it wasn't even close. And so I'll always remember that for sure. Galen, Jim's wife, was kind of the team mom. I seem to remember brownies and cookies being there. Maybe I'm dreaming that. I don't know. Jessica was a little tiny girl, and I remember her running around, and I'm sure there were other guys on the team that she had a crush on besides me. But I remember, these are the things that you remember. There is one thing that bothers me about Galen. So for some reason I developed this, like I said, that team seemed to find trouble. It was weirdly they found trouble. Little stuff, but trouble. But it never found me. And Jim used to say, I think Benzinger's an instigator. I later found out it was Galen who figured that out about me. It was. And then now Brandon Berry says it, Reeker says it, everybody thinks it. So, if your dad's name was Joe Benzinger, you couldn't be around trouble. That's just the way it was. Jim's going to tell you about a team that's probably one of the most, another underappreciated team maybe, but this 1991 team was unbelievable. Ronnie Robinson's here. He led that team on the mound, and they went further in the state tournament than any other team did in any sport. And I'm going to let Jim talk about that. Weirdly enough, Coach Robinson and Chris Kilgore are connected. And here's last. I'm going to wrap it up here. Sorry. Mike Holcomb, my first year, and Chris spoke about Mike. Mike Holcomb was a guy who was a freshman, and he got the call up. Now, a little bit different circumstances because we had some needs that year, and Mike Holcomb was a pitcher. We were low on them. We were kind of short on pitching, and so he got called up, and it still was a tough one to do that because it was, like I said, it's ruffling some feathers. Right in that room over there, which is the teacher's lounge, I remember a conversation. I'm sure he doesn't. I was kind of torn about what I'm going to do about Mike Holcomb. It's going to be a tough thing. Should we bring a freshman up? It's been done, but it's hard. And I remember, this was my first year coaching. I remember Jim saying, "Follow your heart. You're the coach. You do what you want to do, and that's the way it's going to be." And Mike Holcomb ended up being a stud that year. I'll always remember that. I don't know that I would have done that without Coach Robinson saying, "You need to do what you need to do. You know what's going on." So I have two kids that are older, right, 26 and 24, and they're one of the hardest guys to please. And I don't mean that in a pain in the butt kind of way. I just mean that they're very tough for them to say, "Man, I really like that person." They're really good people. I'm not trying to say that they're not, but they are just, you have to be a really special person. And when I told them, both of them, that, hey, Coach Robinson, Jim, JR Superstar, as they know him, is going into the Hall of Fame, it was like, they were so happy. And if you'd have to know my kids to kind of understand this, but their faces when I told them and how happy they were, if you can believe, I don't even think they like me half the time, but they just love this man. So, Jim, talking to him tonight, I learned some things. He didn't come here to stay, I don't think, but he moved here. He taught here for 40-something years. His 3 children went to school here and graduated from here. And tonight we are making him here for good. Jim Robinson.
Jim Robinson, a 1975 graduate of Miamisburg High School, where he was a member of the 1974 district championship and 1975 district runner-up baseball teams. Jim Robinson began his professional career in 1979 at Dayton Jefferson High School, coaching basketball and track. In 1982, Jim moved south to New Richmond, where his storied, successful 40-year teaching and coaching legacy began at New Richmond High School. During his time at New Richmond High School, Jim was a beloved, dedicated coach, investing his time and talent in freshman football, JV basketball, and varsity baseball. As varsity baseball coach for 9 years, from 1985 through 1993, Jim led the Mighty Lions to a district championship in 1985, regional runner-up in 1991, and district runner-up in 1993. Winning 17 postseason career games, Jim was voted 3 times CCL and SBAC Coach of the Year. In 1985 and 1991, Jim was selected All-City Coach of the Year and selected to coach the All-Ohio Series in 1985. In 1989, Jim was voted by his peers to coach the Cincinnati East-West game at Riverfront Stadium, and in 1990, he was selected president of the Southwest Ohio Baseball Coaches Association. Over the course of his coaching career at New Richmond High School, Jim coached 6 All-State baseball players. Jim's expertise, success, and positive rapport in coaching student athletes reached beyond the arenas of sport. For 21 years, Jim served New Richmond High School Student Council Advisor, and he served Yearbook Advisor for 35 years. Jim Robinson is a 1979 graduate of Eastern Kentucky University. He earned a master's degree from Xavier University in 1984. Jim and his wife Galen are the proud parents of daughters Jessica, Rebecca, Aaron, and 7 grandchildren. It is my pleasure to give to you Mr. Jim Robinson for induction into the New Richmond Sports Hall of Fame.
All right, what you've all been waiting for, the last speaker, right? Just a little bit about me, I guess. You know, I didn't grow up here like a lot of these guys. I grew up in Miamisburg, which is above Cincinnati, you know, south of Dayton, and I was always surrounded by a lot of success when I was there. Our baseball team in 1969 went to the state. I was only like 12 years old, and they went to the state that year. But everybody in the town, Miamisburg's a huge baseball town, and everybody just loved the baseball games. They would all go, everybody. And my dad would just take me to some of the practices and just show me how hard these guys worked. And just one thing that stood out, I remember the head coach, this was like 6 o'clock, and these guys had probably practiced for 3 hours. And the head coach went out to the plate with the catcher and just started hitting fungos up in the air, you know, like foul balls. And the catcher would just, you know, flip the mask off, catch foul balls. Sometimes those fungos would go all the way to center field, and that catcher would sprint and catch up, go get that ball, bring it back, go through it, and they'd go 20, 30 minutes sometimes. And it was just the work ethic that those guys had. And I think my dad really knew these guys and wanted me to be around that kind of stuff. And that had a big effect on me. But as I got into high school, I played baseball, and in my junior year, we went to the regionals. So we advanced to the regionals, and we played here in Cincinnati, played at Western Hills, and we lost to Princeton in a close game there. And then we went to the district championship game my senior year, and lost on a really, really tough play. But I was always around good baseball. Then I went to college. I went to Eastern Kentucky after I graduated, and during the summers when I was in college, I would coach an American Legion baseball team there in Miamisburg. American Legion baseball was really big there too, and we had a year where we would get some guys from Centerville and Franklin and Springboro, that kind of area there, and we just had an incredible group of kids. And we played in a league in Dayton that was like 22, 24 teams. And we knew that the winner of this league at the end was going to go to Alabama for almost a week to play in this national tournament. And so, man, we were loaded. And so we won it. We won it all. And we were all excited, you know. And here I was just a college kid. This is going to be fun, you know, going to Alabama. we were supposed to go to Birmingham and just play for a week. And so right after we win the championship game, we're all down on the left field line, I think it was, and so the tournament director and the league director comes down and breaks the news that there was a NASCAR race in Birmingham that week that the tournament was supposed to be held, and the hotels all booked the NASCAR race, and we didn't get to go. And so they said, but we're still having the national tournament, and it's going to be held right here in Dayton, Ohio. And so we were pretty disappointed, but we still got to play in that tournament, and we won some games. I mean, there was teams from all over the country there, and these guys finished something like 4th, I think it was, and that was just one of the most fun teams I ever had. But that was what I did when I was in college. I was just around baseball and around sports, and just thoroughly enjoyed it. But when I graduated from college, I got a call from a high school up there, Dayton Jefferson, and it was a small school. They didn't have a lot of money, and they asked me if I would come in and talk to them on Monday, and I graduated on that previous Saturday. So I went in on that Monday, and the principal went on to tell me about there was an industrial arts opening and there was a science opening, and he wanted to fill them right away, because what had happened was these two teachers were receiving these stolen vans from Michigan, and they were bringing them into the woods room around the back of the school, painting them and selling them, and they got in some major trouble, obviously. And so he said, would you like a job? And that's how I ended up getting my first teaching job, So I thought, well, man, is this the way it's going to be, But I started there, and like I say, the school, they didn't have much. So, that was in 1979. So in 1979, Jefferson won the state in basketball. And then they also had won the state track, boys track. And then the next year they were runners-up in track. But that school won 9 state track championships. They won 3 girls' state championships. And they were just a great school. But the school had, we're talking the best of the best in track. And that school owned, honestly, 1 hurdle. They had 1 hurdle that was in the entire district. The track was an old cinder track that was in the worst shape you've ever seen. But the coach that ran that program, he would have parents come in after school, and they would pick up these kids, and he would take all of the runners down to Trotwood Madison that had a better track, and they would work out there. He would have parents take our long jump kids. We had a high jump kid went to state. He would take them over to Miamisburg, and they would use their facilities. And we would just take kids everywhere and use their facilities, because we just didn't have money there. And we didn't, teachers didn't make any money, but money was the last thing on our mind. And I had the opportunity to start coaching basketball there as a freshman coach. I had a 6'8" and 2 6'6" kids my freshman year, and it was just unbelievable the talent that was in that school. So I was there for 3 years coaching, and then they wanted to close the middle school down, and they had to do a lot of renovations. So they started to RIF a lot of the staff. And the high school staff, we only had 30 teachers, and they actually RIF'd 15 of the 30. And so I lost my job after 3 years there. So I thought, okay, I'll find another job. There's jobs everywhere here. So we started looking for jobs. And my wife, she was, subbing at the time. So we were both just looking for a job close by. The previous year, we had bought a house, renovated it. We were on our way. We'd gotten married that year before, too. And, here we were. Things weren't going our way. So I got through the whole summer, and I still didn't have a job. And I said, I've got to teach. I've got to teach somewhere. I got to find a job. So somebody told me to go down to Miami University and look at their placement, go to their placement office and just see what was going on, see if there's any jobs. So I went down there, and I'm looking at jobs, and they're all over the country. And I finally run across one that said New Richmond, Ohio. So I thought, okay, where is New Richmond, Ohio? So I went over, and I found a map, and I started looking at it, and I said, well, that's not too bad. That's maybe 65, 70 miles from here. We can go down here for 1 year And if I can get that job, then we'll come back and I'll get a job up here again, and we'll keep our house and all that. So I went home and I called. It was on a Thursday afternoon, and Bob McInturf, who was the assistant principal here, answers the phone, and he says, and I asked him, I said, here you have an opening, so forth. He said, yeah, but we just interviewed the last person, and we're going to make a decision in the morning. And I mean, I literally begged. I begged for an interview. I said, I'll come right now if you'll just interview me. And so he said, well, let me go talk to the principal. So he went down, Mr. Graves, Larry Graves was principal, talked to Larry, came back. He said, Mr. Graves says if you'll be here at 8 a.m. in the morning, he will interview you. So that Friday morning at 8 o'clock, we were right here. And so I interviewed, and I knew things had gone really well. I just really liked the way it went. And I think Bob McInturf had a big say in the decision. And so I told him we had to leave because my wife also had an interview because we had to have a job. We had to have some income. So she had an interview down in Kentucky, and that was in the afternoon. So we left here. So we're driving down. We get close to Lexington, and I just looked over. I said, you know what? Let's stop, call, cancel your interview. I've got that job. I know I got it. And she said, no, we can't do that. I can't take chances. And I said, no, I got it. I'm positive. And so we turned around. We went home. And all weekend, I'm thinking, I hope I made the right decision, And then on that Monday morning, it was about 11 o'clock, and Bob McInturf called me. And when I answered the phone, he says, are you ready to go to work? And I thought, man, it just felt, you don't know how that feels when you're looking for a job and you're desperate. And when I said, you bet I am, he said, well, good, you've got freshman football practice today at 3 o'clock. And you need to get down here. So I said, I'm on my way. So I hurried up, and I got down here. Well, that was in fall of 1982, August of 82. And New Richmond had gone through some pretty tough financial times back around 1980 in there. Cut a lot of things, a lot of sports, a lot of coaches. And back then, Ron Bird and Warren McConnell, they were the only two varsity coaches. They were coaching JV and varsity. And then John Brandeberry over here, he had the freshman team. And he had freshman football all by himself. And here, McConnell and Bird, they have the entire varsity program, just the two of them. And so when I come in and I walked in and went up to the office, and he said, well, you need to go down and see Coach Bird. So I went down the bottom, down the bottom hallway, and Adam Bird was down there. That's the first student he was a senior, first student I ever met. And he said, are you probably looking for my dad? And I said, is that Mr. Bird? He said, yeah, come here, I'll show you. So he took me in, and Mr. Bird says, I hear you want to help us out. You might want to scout a little bit for us and all that. And he says, but do you have a place to live? And I said, I just got the job like 3 or 4 hours ago. And I said, no, I don't even know where I am, really. I didn't even know where this place was. So he says, well, he got Brandeberry that day. They were going to have freshman practice, and then the varsity was coming in that evening. And so he asked John to say, can you take that freshman team one more time? And here I remember there was 24 kids on that freshman football team. And so Ron says, come on, we're going to find you a place to live. And he drove me, I think we were somewhere in Felicity. We were in Amelia, I know. We were all over, and I was just looking for a place that had a short lease. And almost everywhere he took me, they said, you got to sign a lease for a full year. And I thought, in the back of my mind, I'm only going to be here for 1 year. I'm just going to be here until the end of May, and then I'm going back because I got a home up there already. And I got to find somebody to rent it, hopefully, and keep that house. So we looked and looked and looked. We found a place. I bet he drove me around for 4 or 5 hours. And, I'm forever indebted to him. And he just put his arm around me and treated me like his own son, And So we found a place in Amelia. I don't know if I would. I don't know. It's pretty bad. You know, we were getting our gas ciphered every night. On and on and on. But anyway, there we were. So I start teaching here. Well, that was on a Monday, and school started on Friday. And so I had to hurry up and try to get this apartment. So then we had to move some furniture down here. We finally found somebody to rent our house, and everything started to fall into place. So I got down here, got into the coaching, you know, with the freshman team and so forth. And then John Brandenberry moved up. He got the JV, you know, going, and then Burton McConnell pretty much was running the varsity. So there was just 4 of us, really. And but man, I'll tell you, it was a real quick turnaround. So at the end of that year, McConnell was like, you know, we really enjoyed coaching with you. You got to think about staying around a little bit. And I'm like, I don't know, I think we're going back. And the more they talked, you know, the more I started to listen. And he kind of talked me into trying to come back one more time. So I went home and I asked my wife if she'd be willing to stay one more year. And she said, only if you get me out of this apartment. And so we got out of there. We moved over to Royal Oak, which at that time was really nice. We were on a golf course. I mean, we thought we were in heaven over there. And we stayed there for a year. And then at the end of our second year, nobody had to say anything. The 2 of us we knew this is where we wanted to be. And so we decided to stay. And we ended up selling our house and on and on. And so this is how I got here. And so when I first came, I started out, I got a freshman football job, and you know, more than anything, John Brandenberry and Warren McConnell and Ron Bird, they helped me. Football was not my strongest sport by any means, and they helped me, you know, beyond belief. They did so much, and I'm very appreciative of that. And then as we got into winter sports, I got to coach JV basketball here. And there was a guy here, his name's Bill Ott, and he had started here the year before, and he was trying to really get the program going. And so I went to an open gym, and he's going, well, these guys, here's this kid, and this kid here's pretty good. And I remember he pointed to this little kid out there, you know, and he said, now that guy right there is probably going to be your point guard this year on the JV. And I go, oh my gosh, I am in trouble. And I go, he's not that good. He's a point guard? And I said, what's his name? He said, his name's Brian Benzinger. And he said, he's better than you think he is. And so I started talking to him, and ended up, he was a lot better than what he was showing that day. And that's kind of how we started to meet Brian. And then my wife would come to the games, and I don't know, we just fell in love with this guy. And my wife, you know, we were ready to start our family, and so she was pregnant for the first time, and I said, you know, we need to start thinking about names. And she said, well, if it's a boy, I know what it's going to be called. It's going to be called Brian. And so, well, Jessica, you were going to be Brian. You know that? Well, then later on, she gets pregnant again, and I said, okay, here we go. Maybe we have Brian this time. Well, Rebecca, she turns out to be Rebecca. No Brian still. So then one more. So the third one, I said, okay, here's our last chance to have Brian, you know. And Galen just had that picked out. And so we find out we're having a girl. So Aaron, you know, you didn't get to be named Brian either. So, but she just, you know, and not only just being one of our, you know, a basketball player and all that, you know, Mr. Caleb's and I, you know, a lot of you know, we've worked out in Coney Island, now Riverbend, for over 40 years, and we've hired hundreds and hundreds of kids from here. And Brian was with us the very first year I worked there, and you know, he was just in our lives all the time, whether it be basketball, and then, you know, I didn't coach baseball until 1985, but I was just always around him. And so we went on, and I got the baseball job in 1985 Mike Simpson was the coach then. But the foundation for baseball had already been laid here. You know, some of you, I'm sure, know Jim Slater. And Jim Slater started in coaching baseball in 1965 here, and he started record books. And he had a lot of things that you know, no one else had done here. He's so organized, and later became superintendent. You know, I think St. Bernard and whatever. But he was just an amazing man. And but he laid the foundation. He coached here for about 7 or 8 years, and then Mike Simpson followed him. And Mike Simpson was very, very successful here. And Mike was a former New Richmond student, played here and all that. Mike went to Eastern Kentucky, where I did, and Mike was, I think, played baseball at Eastern Kentucky. At Eastern Kentucky, and Mike and I taught together. So my first 3 years, you know, I would talk to Mike a lot about baseball, about the baseball program here. But that last year, he was kicking around an idea to get into the insurance business and get out of education. And I know he struggled and struggled with that, and he finally made the decision that he was going to take this insurance business and make that move. And that left the baseball job open. Well, I thought the JV coach would move up, but Jim Campbell, who was the JV coach, also decided to give up baseball. So then the job opened, and I applied, and luckily got it. And then I'd already coached a little bit of football and a little bit of basketball, but then when I got into baseball, I realized how much time that was going to be as a varsity program. So I went one more year, and I coached, I think, baseball and not baseball, but basketball and football for 4 years each, and then I got out of there so I could dedicate more of my time to baseball. And there was just so many people, you know, that played a big part of what we did with the baseball program. I mean, it was unbelievable. The team I started with in 1985, we only had 12 players, but 9 of those players were seniors, and all of those seniors had played for Mike Simpson. Most of them had played even as sophomores, and so they knew baseball. You know, Mike knew his baseball, obviously. So they came up. You know, like I say, I didn't have to create it. I wasn't going into a program that was rock bottom, and I had to build a program. The program was here. I was really, really fortunate. You know, again, I was just surrounded by success all the time with all these things. And so when I took the team, and the hardest thing was, you know, like Brian said, they were a handful. Biggest part was like, well, that's not the way we did it last year. That's not the way we did it last year. And I had to convince them that a lot of times there's more than 2 right ways, you know. And it took me a long time, I think, to gain their trust. But as we got rolling, you know, I realized this was a pretty good baseball team. But then we went to Turpin, and Turpin had a really good team that year. And we beat Turpin pretty good. And then I remember their coach came over to me after the game and said, I don't know if you realize it, but you've got a team that could win the state this year. And he really knew what we had. And, you know, I just knew from then on that we had a special group there. I also, you know, none of this happened because of me. I mean, you've got to have a ton of help. None of this was just me. My first year, I go into a program, there was no coaches at all, so they all left, so I'm looking for somebody to help me. There was no paid varsity assistants, nothing like that. So I'm looking around, and here's Jeff Zink. And so Jeff says, well, I'll probably be willing to come out and help you a few games. I can coach first base for you. And then since the JV job opened, Jim Reeker took the JV job. And I thought, well, this is perfect. These are 2 guys I think a lot of, and we were good friends and all that. This is going to be awesome. So we go out there, and we were over here at this field, you know, beyond the old elementary next door to the middle school now. And that field was in horrible shape. And there was nothing there. It was horrible. I mean, the infield, you know, a ground ball, you didn't know if you were going to get your teeth knocked in. I mean, it was just the worst facility around. And we had to have, you know, before the season started, we had to have days where we would go work on the field. There were trees growing through the fence where guys were going to get their eyes put out, going back to the fence. I mean, it was just awful. And we worked back there, I'm telling you, for hours and hours and hours trying to get the field in good shape. But there was no money. There was no money to bring some dirt in. They still didn't have the money for the facilities. And so we just had to do the best we could. And so that next year, after, you get on the hill over here and you coach and you realize how windy it is. And we would freeze to death at those games. And back when you start playing games, the first half of your season, you might have games, in the low 40s. And these guys, we would literally be shaking out there. It was so cold. And I thought, we got to get dugouts. And so we had a guy that I wish was here tonight, but was a tremendous manager. And his name is Richard Hedrick. And a lot of you know him around town. His name's Shorty. And he was our manager. And this kid, he was by my side all the time. And he helped me, like I was coaching football, he was with me with football, basketball, and everything. And so he says, we need to raise money. We need to do something. So we started selling these little candy bars. They were like Reese cups. They were called Betcha Life bars. And we sold them for 50 cents. And we made a quarter on every one. And this is the honest to goodness truth, but Richie sold and made and profited over $4,000 by himself selling those candy bars. And we knew we had to have money, some big money to build these dugouts. And I think he alone pretty much, we had players, we had other people, but Richie sold the heck out of those candy bars. And so we finally got close to it, and somebody here knew some people, if you remember Gordon Dickerson. Gordon Dickerson came in and said, hey, I've been asked to come in and help you build some dugouts. And he had nobody in the sports program. He came in, we walked over, told him what we wanted, and he said, well, let's get started. And then a lot of you know who Rich Riebel is. Rich Riebel came in, and right away, Rich dug the footers free. Gordon volunteered all of his time, and we put that $4,000 in there, and we started pouring concrete. We were laying block, and we got to the point where I know our money ran out, but Gordon was like a project manager, and he had a place doing some business on Beachmont, and he said, get the school to bring a truck over tomorrow, and I'll get all the lumber and everything we need to finish the roofing and do all that. So we got the truck over there. He donated all that, and here in 1987, we had two of the finest dugouts of anybody in our league. And a lot of that goes to Richard Hedrick for what he did. But it was the support. We had a lot of people in the community. We had a lot of people, parents that day. I know Greg Hawkins was up on the roof over there that day. We were all just trying to get these dugouts finished, and we got them done. And it was just little things like that that meant a lot here. It wasn't stuff that that we just could just click our finger and have it. The facilities were not very good. And I could tell some of you in football, if you played on the football field that was there when I came here, I mean, it was like a herd of horses running down through there, because every program in New Richmond played on it, and after about 2 weeks in the season, it was all dirt, and it was awful. And but we have come so far now, and I think we have some of the best, facilities around. And I hope, our kids don't take that for granted. And those that, were around when we had those facilities, I know you don't. I know you understand what was down there and how far we've come. But anyway, let me just talk a little bit real quick about the 85 baseball team. That team, they were really, really good. I mean, like I say, and we got into the tournament. We started off, and we had a really, really tough game with Hamilton Baden, and we won that. And we had a real pitching staff. And when you get our size here, and back then we were single A, double A, triple A. Those were the three divisions back then. And we didn't go to the divisions until I think it was 1990. And so back then, in double A teams, they didn't have a whole lot of depth on their teams, and the schools weren't that big. But we were very fortunate. And if you really want to move through the tournament and you know something about baseball, you got to have a number 2 starter. because baseball is not like any other sport. You don't put your best team on the field every game. You don't do it. You know, if I could put my best team, which means my number one starter, out on that field every game, I could beat anybody that year, I think. But when you got to go to your number two guy, you know, how good is your number two? And that's the key to high school baseball. Now, you get a lot of these AAA, or now you got your Division I teams. Some of these guys have 3 or 4 guys that could be my number one. You know, they were so big. But that year, we had a number 2 pitcher in John Workman, and we even had a number 3 guy in Kirk Willis. And those 3 guys, they were amazing. And that's why we advanced. And so we got down to, I think it was the sectional, or well, we won second. We went to the district finals, and we were going to play Wyoming. Wyoming had played the year before us, or the day before us, and they had a real good left-hander, and we wanted to play that day because he was limited to number of innings. Well, there was no umpires. And they said, well, we'll have to move the game to Monday. And I said, no, that kid will be able to throw the whole game. And so we waited and we waited and we waited. And finally they came over and they said, look, Coach, these guys have a prom tonight. And we're going to give them 5 more minutes. And if the umpires aren't here, it's going to Monday. And so we were starting to pack it up. And all of a sudden, we looked up here in the hill, and here come these 2 umpires. And I heard parents hollering and screaming and everything. So we got the game going, and like Brian said, we won as a district finals, we won 17-0, and Donnie Morrison pitched a no-hitter that game, and you know, it wouldn't have mattered who they would have thrown. I mean, that team was ready, and so we advanced into the regionals. But that was just an incredible team. We had some other good teams, and you know, I'm gonna move along a little bit. 91 was our other regional team. And back here, Ronnie Robinson's back here in the back. He was the ace on that staff. And that was a year going into 91. I didn't think this team was really that good. I didn't. And I thought, well, we only got 1 pitcher in Ronnie. And, you know, if we got Ronnie pitching, we'll beat anybody. So we go out, we get up into the, I think we won the sectionals. We've got maybe a sectional finals. And so, Ronnie had won, and he was limited in innings. So our number 2 pitcher was Ethan Rowan, and the Big E. You remember him, Ronnie? So I thought, okay, he's got to pitch the next game, and we were playing Cape. And some of you might remember the team Cape over on the other side of town. Well, Cape was the number 1 team in the state. They had the number 1 catcher in the state. They had the number 1 base stealer in the area. I mean, they were just tremendous. So I get out there with Ethan. I'm thinking, okay, I'm just cross my fingers. Hopefully we can keep it close and just have a chance. So we go out in the first inning, and we get a guy on, and we're trying to bunt him up. And they throw the ball down the right field line, and on, and we ended up with a good inning. And anyway, we get down to the end of the 6th inning. We're leading 3-2. And I'm thinking, okay, we come off the field. We got 1 inning to go. And I look over at Ronnie. I said, come here. I said, I want you to go get loose. You're going back out the last inning, the 7th. And he goes, man, Ethan's throwing really well. And I said, go get loose. You got to pitch. You know, I thought that my luck had run out. You know, he was starting to get hit and so forth. But anyway, he goes and gets loose. So he gets out there. First guy up was the number 1 base stealer in the city. So he gets on base. I can't remember if he got a hit, but Ron probably hit him or something. But anyway, he got on first base, and I'm thinking, okay, 2 pitches, this kid's going to be on third. Well, Ronnie, who has probably the best pickoff move in the history of Ohio baseball, he has this kid leaning, and all of a sudden picks him off first base, and 2 more outs, and we beat the number 1 team in the state. And I mean, that's when we knew we were pretty good. We went to the next game, and we beat Loveland, and we beat Loveland, I think it was like 5-2. Ronnie got to pitch that whole game, and we moved on. We got to the regionals, and we played Eaton, and Ronnie pitched that game. So we were supposed to play that game there was 2 games up in Springfield, and we were supposed to play the second game, but we had graduation that night. And so John Fry was our principal then. And so John came to me the day before and he said, hey, we need to move that baseball game, play the first one so these kids can get back for graduation. And I said, well, I'm fine with that. I'd love it. But the state, they don't change anything. And he said, well, let me call them. I said, well, you're wasting your time. They won't change anything. So I bet it was 30 minutes or so. He comes back down to my room. He said, hey, you're playing tomorrow at like 1 o'clock. And he got it switched. So we go up, we beat Eaton, and we get these guys back here. We had graduation here in the gym. And so we were, you know, here we were. Everybody got to graduate. So we went, next day we go back to Springfield and we played Columbus Watterson. And Columbus Watterson beat us pretty good. And then they go to Columbus the next week in the state, and they ruled both teams. And I mean, you know, these guys were really good. And back in '85, the team that beat us in the regionals, they went to the state finals and they lost in the last inning on a wild pitch. So I mean, the 2 teams that beat us in the regionals were 2 outstanding teams. But you know, I was blessed with talent. You know, baseball players here were just, man, they weren't a dime a dozen. They were good. They were good. We had a lot of talent, and we ended up with 6 all-state players: Brian and Donnie Morrison on that '85 team. You know, they got to go to Columbus. And then I was chosen to coach up there, and it was awesome. I mean, we got to go up there, and there was like 4 teams and played round robin games and played against some good talent. We had a guy, was it Scott Service, was on our team.
Yeah.
You know, former major league player. We had some great talent on our team. And then next year, Jeff Ast was an all-state player. Corey Lytle came along. Toby Shamblin that you mentioned, and Brad Blankenship was my last player. He was an all-state player. So we had great players. We had some really good players, and none of this would have happened, you know, by just me or these guys. These guys were what made it happen. You know, I had a lot of help here with the teaching staff. We had an incredible teaching staff that you could rely on, and sometimes if a bus had to leave, I mean, you just ask anybody, they would jump right in. Custodians back in that time, they would prepare the field over there, and it seemed like everybody liked doing that. David Ryle was the principal next door, but I don't know how many times he was so patient with me. I don't know how many windows we broke, if you remember that, how we'd hit the ball over that fence and go down that over by the left field line and hit that kindergarten window, and we broke a few windows in batting practice. But you know, he was patient with us. I appreciated that. A lot of opposing coaches. You know, we had like Felicity coach. He wanted to play all the time. He had an incredible program. Back then, Felicity had 3 teams. They had a freshman team. Small school, but they had a freshman team. Dave Broush, John Warden. I don't know if any of you remember John Warden. He was another guy who wanted to play all the time. You'd get guys that you knew wanted to play, and you could schedule them easy, get scrimmages and so forth. John Warden was a major league player. In fact, he and you guys know the name Denny McClain. Well, John Warden played on the team with Denny McClain, and John would always say that he and Denny McClain teamed up and won 34 games back in 1968. And the thing was that you know, John only won 4 of those 34, and that's the last time that anybody won 34 or won 30 games. But there were so many good opposing coaches that really played a big part. I can't even express how I feel about all the guys that helped me just in baseball. From starting off with Jeff Zink. I mean, he was with me for a few years, and he was a great guy. I mean, one time, just a quick story, we went out the first year and we were playing Batavia, and so we go up, you know, I think we held them. We go up to bat at the bottom of the first, and we're getting ready to hit. I see coach comes out, he's talking to the umpire. Umpire motions me down. I said, Coach, that first base coach you got down there's got to get off the field. And I said, what's going on? He said, well, his uniform doesn't match the team's. he doesn't have a stripe on his pants. And again, if you remember, we didn't have a lot of money. We didn't have great uniforms. And I said, you're kidding me. Just because of a stripe? And he says, he's got to go. And so he comes down, and so I go, Tavia, coach, I'm going, is this the way you're going to treat me? This is my first season here. Is this the way you treat me? And he was like, yeah, because you guys win all the time. New Richmond wins all the time. And so I said, okay, if that's the way it's going to be, then we'll get serious here. And he comes out apologizing. And, oh, come on, we'll let him be out there. Well, anyway, this guy later on became my principal here. And Kirk Hamilton, if you remember Kirk Hamilton. So after that day, we got along just fine. We actually ended up we going to school together, and but he was just a great. But Jeff kind of went through some stuff there with him, and but that first year, man, we took it so serious. Every game, it seemed like, whether home or away, we'd get home, we'd go to Frisch's, and we would close Frisch's down every night, and we drank the last cup of coffee. And we would say, I'm not sure that's the right lineup. What do you think? Maybe we need to move this kid here. And we had it the way we wanted it, but we could have put that lineup anyway. They would have won no matter what. But we discussed it every which way, every time. And you know, it was a sad day when baseball was over because Frisch's lost a lot of business too. Greg Hawkins, another one, you know, was our assistant coach here. Back in to start out, he helped me, and then he became our JV coach, and then he was the JV coach here, I think 3 or 4 years, and then he actually followed me and was the head baseball coach here. But Greg played a big part and was just, you know, always at the games, just really a big part of this. I mentioned Jim Rinker. Jim Rinker was JV coach. You know, he and I, you know, we had to share that old John Deere tractor that didn't have a muffler, didn't have a hood on it. And you could hear it all the way to Felicity when you started up, when you try to drag the field. And then we had one rake, and we had to share this rake back and forth from the softball, or where they played JV, and then when he started coaching softball, we had to do the same thing. We had to share one rake, and then that old John Deere tractor, we just hoped it would start. And we had to do our own stuff. And it was hard to coach because you had to spend all your time from after school till the game started trying to get the field ready and trying to get the field lined until finally we got into a little bit more where then the custodians got to come out and help and on and on. But I appreciate everything you did. We had a lot of fun. I got to mention Chris Hawkins. You know, Chris was inducted into the Hall of Fame, and Chris was a volunteer assistant coach for me. Started in '89, and he was here for 3 years, and he was here when Ronnie was here. And Chris was a tremendous pitcher here. And I'll tell you, I think Chris had probably more to do with Ronnie's success than anybody, maybe. I mean, Ronnie really thought the world of him, and he was amazing, wasn't he? And then we also had Bill Ott. You know, that I mentioned Bill Ott was a JV coach 1 year. You know, basketball, we had a lot of help. Football, I mentioned a lot of guys. Jim Rinker and I coached freshman football together. Greg helped. You know, Mike Simpson came out, Jamie Coral. These were guys that would come out and just help. And those were a lot of people that I wanted to thank. And then the last part, I want to thank my family. And you know, I think a lot of my success came from my mom and dad. And I was raised right. And my mom, she's 86, and you know, she was one that really was the anchor in my house when I grew up. And you know, it was church on Sunday, and you know, homework when you get home. I mean, she set the tone, and I think a lot of you know, my discipline and things came from her, and my work ethic came from my dad. My dad, you know, he worked 7 days a week, many times 16-hour days. You know, he just worked all the time. But neither one, they didn't have anything growing up. And my dad had nothing growing up. I mean, you know, neither one completed high school. They just didn't have anything. And I was the first college graduate in the family. And when I told my mom and dad I was going to go to college, I mean, that was the highlight of their life, it seemed like. And they did everything they could to help me get through college. But you know, I don't know. My dad was just, you know, he was just a big part of everything that's happened to me. I have one brother, and my brother Keith, he was a tremendous athlete, much better athlete than anybody, one of the best in our entire family. But he was a really good basketball player, and he was a tremendous baseball player. He actually ended up, he got the very first scholarship at Wright State University. And Wright State was really developing their baseball program back in the late 70s. And the coach came to our house, was recruiting him. And that year, Wright State got one scholarship. They gave the baseball program one scholarship. And they told him, you know, if you will take this, we're going to break it into thirds. And I'm going to try to get 3 pitchers to come on board, and each one of you will get a third of this scholarship. And so he did, and they had a great team and went on. And then Greg went up there. Greg knows a lot about Wright State baseball, and that program has just gone from there. They've been very successful. But he went on to coach, and he started at Bellbrook. And a lot of you know Bellbrook. We played him in a football game a number of years ago. But he started there, and they didn't have much in baseball. He had I remember a story he was telling me. He called me one night. He goes, I don't know if I can get this program off the ground. These guys don't know a thing about baseball. And he said, you won't believe tonight. He goes, we're playing this game tonight. And he goes, I look over, and my left fielder is just literally leaning back against the fence. And he says, we're ready to throw a pitch, and the kid's all the way back leaning against the fence. And I told my assistant coach, said, hey, get him. So the assistant coach says, hey, come in. And so he's hollering at this kid, trying to, you know, get him to move in instead of playing so deep. So my brother says, you know, the pitch is made, you know, then before the next pitch, tap on his shoulder, here's that kid going, Coach, what do you want me to come in for? What do you need? You know? And he said, I've got stories like that all the time, that these kids didn't know anything. But he developed that program, and they became pretty good. And then he went back to our home school in Miamisburg, and got to coach baseball there, and then actually took a team to the state in I think it was 2006, and they went to the state in baseball. So he's done very well, and he's got, you know, 3 terrific kids. His oldest son played Division I basketball, and you know, just a great family. And then my family. I've got 3 daughters over here that I know they sacrificed a lot with me coaching and being away, and by teaching and then doing things from yearbook and student council, along with some coaching for a while. And they did a lot without me. But, you know, I think the world of them. They're all successful. They're all college graduates. They all graduated from here. All 3 were student council presidents here. And, you know, I didn't count the votes, but they were all 3 student council presidents, and they've gone on to college and have just done very, very well. They also got married, and you know, as a parent, I think as your kids start to get to high school, you start to worry, and you're thinking, okay, you know, who will be the first one to get married, and then more importantly, who will they marry? You know, are they going to marry somebody that we can live with? Somebody that's going to be good to them, be a good father, take care of them when they need. You just pitch in and be, you know, someone that we're proud of. And I'll tell you, my wife and I talk about this all the time, but we think we hit the lottery. And all 3 of them have just, I mean, I can't brag on them enough. But you know, starting with Jessica down there on the end, she's married Mike down there. And then they've got 3 kids. There's Jordan, and then there's Kinsey, and then Ryan down there at the end. And then we've got Rebecca, who had to move back home. They wanted to be back in New Richmond, you know, raise their family here. And they were down in Kentucky and Louisville and all that. And they moved back here, and they're back in our school district. But Rebecca married Randy Williams. A lot of you know Randy Williams and the Williams family. And so they married. And they've got 2 incredible kids. They've got Mason right here, who's a 5th grader out at Monroe. And then they've got Allie, who will be the next All-American basketball player. And she's a 1st grader at Monroe. And they're both just great grandkids. And then that leaves me with Erin. Well, Erin, she went to college, she went to Eastern Kentucky, and she married, well, didn't marry yet, but she started dating a guy who was involved in a golf program. And so she came home and said, I think I got a boyfriend, and ended up, she, when they graduated, she got married to Will, who is a golf pro. And Will is, from Lexington, Kentucky, and they have since, they've got 2 kids. They've got Avery. Wave at me, Avery. Avery's 5. And then the main man, 2-year-old Jackson down there. And so we've got 7 grandkids. And I'll tell you, they've all just been our life now that I've retired. Our whole world revolves around these guys. And then I got to finish with my wife, Gaylene. And we've been married since 1981. And like Brian was saying, she was like the teen mom. And if you ever hear opposites attract, well, opposites attract, because we have nothing in common. We really don't. And I love sports. I was always around sports. She doesn't have anything to do with sports. She likes to go and attend games, but she could care less about most of them. But I got her involved, and she was a big part of all the teams I had. She learned how to keep score and do things like that. But she was always a part. But as I was real busy back there when I came here, and one time I was coaching 3 sports and all of that, I'd go home one night and I said, well, how we do tonight? Well, I took Jessica to soccer, but this parent had to pick her up and bring her over to where Rebecca was practicing, and then I had to go over here, and I started seeing the writing on the wall, and she never ever asked me to give anything up. But I could see that, with 3 kids, and as they started to grow and get a little older, it was time for me to be a father and not, be just a coach so much. And so I got out of all the coaching eventually, and then I did some things here as a student council and yearbooks that would allow me to do more things here, and then be at home in the evening with my kids and do the things they needed. But she never asked me to do anything. She's given up a big part of her life at times, and just been a part of all this. And I never could have done it without her. But I thank the world of you for doing that. So I was told not to mention her, but she did. Okay, but anyway, I appreciate this. I thank the committee. Congratulations to everybody that was up here. And like Brian said, I've seen some of these too at other schools, and some people, they just do like what we did at halftime of the basketball game. They bring people out, introduce them at halftime, and that's the end of it. Give them a plaque, go home. But nobody does it like this. I've never seen anything like this. And he's been doing this for a long, long time. And he's just, that's the way he is. He's first class all the way. He makes sure that everybody, gets their worthwhile. I know that. So hopefully he doesn't retire. He stays around a lot more, because he'll be very much missed. Can't find people wanting to work 14 nowadays. So he's going to be missed. But I thank you very much. I appreciate it.
We really appreciate all of you coming out tonight. It's a great honor when you have 4 people like this going into the Hall of Fame. And I know it's always a fairly lengthy night, but it's really well worth it one time a year. Just one more thing I would like to thank, and it's one of those things, Tyler Anderson, I felt pretty good going into the night until he started talking about how old and gray I was. And how freaking long I had been here. And I'm sitting there thinking, wow, I really have been here a long time. I get asked constantly, is this your last year? You're retired? That's just a principle worth wishful thinking. I think Mr. Stewart would love to see that happen. But no, and all joking aside, it's just been, this is a great thing. This is a great honor. But this thing here doesn't happen without some passion from people to make it happen. And there's nobody that has more passion for this event than a lady who has bought the tablecloths, who buys the candles, who writes the plaques, who spends hours researching and is just an amazing friend of mine. And I couldn't appreciate anyone any more than Liz Machef and everything that she's done. And Liz, we'd like to present you with this just for all the things that you have done for us. And thank you so much. On top of she gave birth to the greatest basketball player in the history of New Richmond, doesn't hurt anything either. So. But thank you all for coming out. Please, please, please. The flowers that are in front of you, they have to go home with you. Take them to a good place. It's not going to the foot house because we will kill them. There is cookies like crazy over here. I'm sure there's coffee still left. One more time, let's stand and applaud our 4 new inductees into the Hall of Fame. Feel free to get all the pictures that you would want with them. God bless you. Be safe going home. Thank you.